Thanks for tuning in. Today we're continuing our Century Series theme with one of the classics, the North American F-100D Super Sabre. As many of you know, the last episode covered the Convair F-106 Delta Dart. So today, let's dive into the story of the F-100 Super Sabre and how this aircraft came to be. Now, before we jump into the aircraft history, let's cover some of the key points. So, this is an F-100D Super Sabre, and this is the single seat version from the 4th 16th Tactical Fighter Squadron of the 27th Tactical Fighter Wing. This aircraft was flown by Harold Comstock and was stationed at Bien Hoa Air Base in Vietnam during the war, circa 1966. Let's take a moment to talk about Harold Comstock. So, Lieutenant Harold Comstock, nicknamed the Bunny, went on to serve with distinction with the 56th Fighter Group, completing two combat tours and commanding the 63rd Fighter Squadron. He also flew 132 missions in Super Sabres and was credited with five aerial victories. After World War II, he remained in the Air Force, flying the F 100 Super Sabre during the Vietnam War and commanding the 4th 81st Tactical Fighter Squadron, bringing his total to 170 missions. Colonel Comstock retired from the United States Air Force in 1971 after a long and decorated career. He died in Clovis, California in 2009 at the age of 88. Rest in peace to one of our heroes. Now, since we've got that part out of the way, let's jump into the history of the North American F-100 Super Sabre and see how it became one of the Century Series fighters. So let's take a look at the story of the F-100 Super Sabre, nicknamed the Hun, and see what role this aircraft played in military aviation history. So, once again, in our last episode, we covered the F 106 Delta Dart and learned about its capabilities. In this episode, we'll check out what the F 100 was all about. I know sometimes I get a little wordy in my videos, so thanks for bearing with me. I'll try not to be long winded. All right, let's jump into it. Nearly 72 years ago in aviation history, on May 25th, 1953, the North American F-100 Super Sabre took to the skies for the first time. The maiden flight was conducted by the North American Aviation's chief test pilot, George Welch, at Edwards Air Force Base in California. So Welch was already a decorated aviator by that time, having famously been one of the few American pilots able to get airborne during attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941, flying a Curtiss P-40B Tomahawk. Just incidentally, he shot down three Aichi D-3A dive bombers and one Mitsubishi A-6M. So, during the Super Sabre's first flight, the prototype YF-100A with a serial number 525754 reached a speed of Mach 1.3, making it the first U.S. Air Force fighter capable of exceeding the speed of sound in level flight. The F 100 was developed as a supersonic successor to the highly successful F 86 Sabre. Although originally designed as an air superiority fighter, as time went on, the F 100 took on a fighter bomber role largely at the request of Tactical Air Command. Further, this led to the development of the F 100C and the F 100D variants, which were optimized for ground attack missions. The Super Sabre played a significant combat role during the early years of the Vietnam War, flying numerous close air support sorties over South Vietnam. So, for the North American aviation, after many years of aerodynamic research, The designers of the F-100 Super Sabre believed it would be a classic air-to-air fighter for modern era, capable of competing with the Soviet Union's latest technology. The F-100 Super Sabre began as an internal study in 1949 to evolve the F-86 Sabre into a more advanced fighter. The project was initially called the Sabre 45. Well, because of its 45-degree swept wing design. Now, with that stated, the F 100 became one of the most famous American swept wing aircraft designs at the time. The F 100 was capable of confronting the Soviet MiG 17's fighters. For those of you um, who may not know about the MiG 17s, well, the MiG 17s is an itty bitty aircraft compared to the American fighters like the Super Sabre or, let's say, the Thunder Chief. The MiG 17s were very effective in terms of tie turning performance and carrying a very large cannons. Any event, so in November 1951, the United States Air Force ordered two prototypes and requested 250 airframes. After development was completed, the first prototype, named YF-100A, reached a speed of Mach 1.5. The aircraft was equipped with a Pratt& Whitney XJ57 engine. So moving on, the Air Force conducted an operational evaluation from 1953 to 1955. However, the aircraft was still considered not ready for full-scale development due to several critical design deficiencies. The first design flaw was its poor directional stability. The aircraft was notoriously difficult to handle in its early days. Not an easy aircraft to control. The aircraft suffered from adverse yaw due to its swept wing design, basically leading to violent, unrecoverable stalls, also known as a saber dance. Um, the Super Sabre was a challenging aircraft to fly, frequently pushing pilots to their absolute limits during testing. So, after those design flaws were identified, the North American Aviation quickly worked to fix the aircraft's problems. The engineers at the North American did some major modifications to the airframe. They significantly increased the surface area of the vertical stabilizer, also extending the wingtips to improve handling and improved hydraulic systems. And this project was called the High Wire. So, roughly from 1962 to 1965, basically to overhaul and standardized the F-100D slash F models. The program upgraded over 700 aircraft with new wiring harnesses and improved avionics. Also, to improve the structural changes to boost the reliability and expand weapon capacity, so the aircraft could be adapted to carry more rockets and missiles, and also carry a Mark 7 and Mark 28 nuclear armament. Additionally, a 20 millimeter cannon. The aircraft could also be fitted with the three external fuel tanks if needed, basically allowing it to be scrambled for long range sorties, or sorties, I should say. Excuse my American accent, folks. So that's just the way we pronounce things. Anyway, coming back to the subject at hand, so the F-100C and the F-100D were specially configured for nuclear strike missions, while the F 100A was primarily an air superiority fighter. It's worth noting that the F 100 Super Sabre was used in some pretty dangerous missions during the Vietnam War. In 1965, alongside the F 105 Thunder Chief as part of the Operation Rolling Thunder. including a Misty Fast. That's what the way they were calling it at the time, and also the Wild Weasel, which was a SAM suppression rolls. While it was mainly a close air support aircraft, however, these missions involved flying deep and low over North Vietnam to locate and destroy enemy targets. So the pilots were flying the F-100F variant. They flew fast and low, basically taking risks to locate hidden targets in North Vietnam. Also, there were multiple variants of the North American F 100 Super Sabre. The F 100F, the two seater, were the first specialized aircraft used to locate and destroy North Vietnamese SAM sites. Um, Taking deep penetration missions into the dangerous airspace. Also, early in the war, the F 100C variant escorted the F 105 Thunder Chiefs on bombing raids over North Vietnam. The Super Sabre took part in the strike missions against heavily defended targets such as the Tanaha Bridge during the Operation Rolling Thunder. Despite repeated attacks, the bridge proved extremely resilient and it was protected by intense anti aircraft fire. Also, one of the Super Sabre formations was attacked by North Vietnamese MiG 17s, although the MiG 17 were significantly slower than the Super Sabre because those MiGs were equipped with the powerful triple cannons. They managed to knock one Super Sabre out of the sky, making these missions some of the most dangerous of the war. So, um, the F 100 Super Sabre became a respected and capable platform. So, by the 1960s, later variants like D and F model have become reliable and mainstay of American air power in Southeast Asia. The aircraft flew hundreds of thousands of sorties into Vietnam, logged more individual combat missions than any other U.S. fighter in the war, primarily serving in a close air support and ground attack missions. And we're talking between, if my memory serves, from 1964 to 1971. Also, one of the interesting features added to the F 100 Super Sabre toward the final stages of its development was something called like ZEL. Basically, stands for, I think it's zero length launch. So, this system allowed the aircraft to be launched from mobile platforms rather than relying on vulnerable runways. Well, the idea was to enable the aircraft to take off from almost anywhere instead of using traditional airfields. Well, the whole idea was they wouldn't need runways in case if the enemy destroyed them and made the traditional takeoffs nearly impossible. Anyway, beyond its combat role, the F 100 also gained a cultural recognition by serving with the United States Air Force Thunderbirds from 1956, showcasing its capabilities, pulling off some amazing maneuvers all across the country. Well, the Thunderbirds, knowing as the United States Air Force Elite Demonstration Team, though that's a subject I'll cover in more detail in later video focused on their F-16, but I digress. In any event, the F-100 Sabre really marked the start of a new era in aviation history. The F-100 kicked off the Century series of supersonic jets. However, later more glamorous, I should say, aircraft like the F-101 Voodoo brought more advanced capabilities to the era. The Super Sabre was eventually supplanted by more advanced aircraft such as the A-7 Corsair and the McDonnell Douglas F-4 Phantom. So, to wrap the aircraft story, only four aircraft remain airworthy, all based in the United States. Among them is the F-100F with a serial number 563844, operated by the Collings Foundation, which recently returned to the flight after a lengthy restoration. And I believe the aircraft is being prepared for 2026 air shows. That's a pretty rare, like to see an older fighters restored and brought to air shows. I would love to see this process applied to more aircraft, such as the F-4 Phantom and the F-14 Tomcats, among others, so we could still enjoy seeing those magnificent machines fly. But anyway, returning to the conclusion of the aircraft's story, the Super Sabre was a groundbreaking aircraft that helped shape the future of jet and powered combat aviation during the Cold War. Its legacy remains firmly etched in the annals of military aviation history, and to this day, many survive in aviation museums across the globe. Folks, the F 100, um, just beautiful aircraft, in my opinion. I think a lot of times the F 100 is pretty underrated in the history books, but I think it was the true pioneer of its time, an aircraft that combined sleek design, lasting performance, and a distinguished service record. And that is the story of the Super Sabre. With all that historical established here, let's move on to the model. This is a Hobbymaster 1/72nd scale. The model number is HA2101. First of all, this is one of the Hobbymaster's earliest releases, dating back many years. I've had this model in my collection for quite a long time. I can't even remember. Probably I need to verify the exact chronological dates on this one. But anyway, overall, it's a beautiful piece, and the F-100 Super Sabre definitely deserves a place in any collection. Even if you're not a big fan of the aircraft, it's worth having at least one. The amount of work that Hobbymaster put into this model is truly impressive, from the fine details to the paint quality. The model, made mostly from die-cast metal, the model feels solid and heavy. To me, it's a pretty darn cool looking model. The glossy nature finish looks pretty darn nice, and it's well executed. Though it may not come across as well on camera, the camera doesn't quite do it justice compared to seeing it in person. One of the things I really like, that Hobbymaster absolutely nailed on this model is the rear section around the J57 engine. So on the real F-100 Super Sabre, that area gets extremely hot, so the paint tends to wear and fade. Not gonna last, right? So Hobbymaster did a great job replicating this with subtle weathering and fading. So thumbs up to Hobbymaster for nailing that detail. They did capture the pedals of the engine nozzle as well. It's modeled accurately. The other notable details, such as the markings insignia, the unit, also the kill marks, mission symbols, or the combat achievements, I should say. So all those details came out great. Props to Hobbymaster. Now let's check out the accessories. This model includes a two types of refueling probes, plus the pitot tube, just like the real F-100. So out of the box, you'll get both the curved and the straight one. You also get a couple of air-to-ground bombs configurations. Um, Typically MK82 style, as seen on the F-100. Also, you'll get a couple of fuel tanks, as it's showing here in this shot, and two AIM-9 Sidewinders and additional rocket pods. So I think it's a really good, diverse loadout. I'm really glad with this particular example. Most of the accessories fit seamlessly. So no glue, no fuss, no muss. Everything feels solid and durable. However, the only minor issue isn't really a flaw. This the What I was about to say, the right landing gear sits slightly cockeyed. I'm not sure what the core cause of it, and also installing the refueling probe can take a bit of time to get it properly fitted into the slot. So you have to be careful with that. If you snap the peg and you're stuck, otherwise, everything is great, other than those imperfections. And I'm really glad all the accessories match the age of the airplane. You won't find any anachronistics like with other model manufacturers. Anyway, this is a really good release in terms of what it carries. The only downside, like I said earlier, It's the one of the Hobby Master's earliest releases, so good luck finding it at a reasonable price. I did quick check on the secondary market prior to this video, and I found this release, and surprisingly, it wasn't marked up too high, even for being an older release. I'm assuming it's because the new F-100 releases are just around the corner, and I thought it wise to publish this video, on the Hobby Masters timeline. Basically, I'm trying to give you before and after perspective, especially since they've recently released two new renditions of the F-100. So if you can find this one at a good price, trust me, it's a great buy. However, if you can't find this one, then just wait for the new releases to come out. I'm really glad to see Hobby Master taking the time and effort to reproduce the F-100 tooling after such a long gap. I think it's been a way too long since the last release. Another thought, I would love to see Hobby Master to produce the F-100 in a two-seat configuration. I'm not sure if they will, but I'll keep my fingers crossed for the future. So with that, we covered the model. Um, I do like the F-100. It's a very sleek looking aircraft. As I mentioned earlier, even if you're not a big fan, trust me, having at least one in your collection is absolutely worth it. Anyway, I'm really glad to have this model in my collection, especially since it was flown by pilot Ronald Comstock. And finally, here is one last point I'd like to highlight briefly. So, for those of you who are new to the channel, first of all, thank you for your support. So, what I do here is dive into the history of the different aircraft and share the stories behind them because I'm a firm believer those stories are worth telling. And of course, at the end, I'll also give you my thoughts on the model itself. So, just to give you an idea of what this channel is all about. So, thank you for watching all the way to the end. If you enjoyed my content and want to support the channel, please consider subscribing. Give it a thumbs up. Take care, and I'll catch you all in the next review.